was a conspiracy that led to JFK's death. It's almost impossible to believe anything other. But is it possible that JFK was actually assassinated by the very person that was there to protect him? By one of the Secret Service agents, William Greer. There are scenes in this video that some viewers may find disturbing.
This video basically shows Greer just as JFK's head basically explodes. Nice way of putting it. William Greer turns and looks at JFK. The theory being that he turns around and shoots him point blank in the face. Why do we have this theory? Obviously, there's the video. The timing is very suspicious. William Greer was actually born in Ireland. He was an Ulster Protestant. Richard Greer, his son, years later, told an interview that actually he was not a fan of JFK's politics. JFK was a Catholic, had Catholic ideals. William Greer was not a fan of that. So, in this video, I'm going to explain why actually this theory is a nonsense. I'm also going to explain why there wasn't a shooter on the grassy knoll. But I'm also going to explain why that does not mean that William Greer is not innocent, because I believe he's guilty as sin. He was an experienced Secret Service agent. He had driven for Truman, Eisenhower, then he drove for JFK. He says he's innocent. He says when he heard the first shots, he thought it was a motorbike backfiring, which in the 60s, I imagine that was quite a common noise, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Yeah. But it is true that he slowed right down just before the first shot, and he only accelerated after the death shot, which it seems he turned around to check.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot more goes into this, and there's a lot more of the conspiracy. And I'm going to explain the whole thing, and I'm also going to explain how, if I was planning to kill JFK, how I'd have done it, and how it looks an awful lot like what happened on the day. If ever you've watched CSI, the only way you get a wound like that, where the face basically exploded, is if it was quite a soft round. So a soft bullet, a low density bullet. So what happens is the bullet goes in, small entry wound. It then goes in and hits the inside of the skull. But the bullet deforms and what they call mushrooms. Simply, it looks like a mushroom. It flattens at the front and condenses. So when it hits the inside of the skull, it hits it like a hammer. That is how you then get that very large exit wound. All right. It's the only way it could have happened.
Yeah. The physics of the situation makes sense that he was shot from behind, because the small entry wound. Obviously, that doesn't really have a huge impact, so it doesn't really force the head forward a lot. It would have forced it forward a little bit, but not a huge amount. Then when it hits the inside of his skull and creates the exit wound, and then a piece of his face is flung that way. Newton's
That's why you get the
equal and opposite reaction. The back and to the left, so his head goes back.
Yes.
It's because of so you suspect the type of round being a soft,
very
round.
low density soft bullet, which is the sort of ammunition you would use if you wanted to definitely kill somebody. A much harder, higher density round could have ricocheted off the skull. It could have created quite a low amount of damage. It could have literally passed through like some of the earlier rounds did, and not killed him. If you want to guarantee you're going to kill somebody, you use a low density round and you hit him in the head, and you basically destroy most of the head. And a piece of his skull was found nearly 20 foot away. I have to remember as well. This was a very high impact round. High impact shot.
A lot of energy was obviously transferred from the bullet into the skull then, and then that piece flying 20 meters away, which would also explain the violent head back into the left jerking movement, as it was the front right of his face.
Exactly. But if we talk about the weapon a little bit, all right, so in the official account, it was Lee Harvey Oswald that did it. But he used different ammunition, which is very strange, very unusual, because the magic bullet round that we talk about that supposedly went through JFK's neck or shoulder, and then went through the chair and went through and did these 45-degree angles and the thing. and then went through Connolly, sorry, who was sat in front of him, and ricocheted off his bone in his arm, but then was found in the hospital in pristine condition, just nicely sat on the hospital bench. Right, that's a nonsense. There is no way that round was in anything like that condition. But that's all part of the conspiracy, isn't it? They needed to find the bullet so they could. They needed to find a bullet in good condition so they could prove Oswald had done it, because then they can do by the striations, and they can prove which weapon it was fired from. So they needed that. So that explains why that bullet was found. We know now that actually the magic bullet myth is a myth. It didn't do all these things, and it's because it was always assumed that JFK and Connolly were sat directly in front of each other. And they weren't. Connolly was actually quite a bit more forwards than it was believed. He was also sat lower. The seat was set up so that it was lower and slightly to the left, so that people could see the people in the back better, could see JFK better. This was a purpose-built vehicle, and it was done like that. So when you actually position Connolly in the right position, the magic bullet isn't so magic. It is a reasonable trajectory, and the injuries are quite well understood. But those would have been a high density round, because that did penetrate a lot and didn't break up. It didn't mushroom. We then actually found the round. So we know that was a high density round. So why was Oswald using different ammunition? Well, they did explain it. A Vincent P. Gunn, I think it's actually Gwynn, Guinn, but I want to call him Gunn because that's, better. Because he wasn't actually an expert in ammunition. Right. The weapon JFK used? That's not right. The weapon that Oswald used was an M38 Carcano rifle. Guess who set up the contract in 1954 to buy a crapload or produce a crapload of these weapons? If anybody was to buy these weapons originally, and you'd go, that's suspicious, who would it be?
Well, exactly.
It starts with a C. It's got an A on the end, and I know who it was in the middle. The CIA actually created the contract in 1954 to manufacture a load of these weapons and then send them off to foreign countries to fight the Russians. So we were basically supplying foreign nations the Americans were, to fight the Ruskies. A load of these weapons were then bought back in 62 and sold into the civilian market. And it happened to be the weapon that Lee Harvey Oswald got his hands on. But when they looked at the ammunition, they found that this was done a bit on the cheap. And what they found was, normally, if you buy a box of ammunition, those bullets are all uniform. They're all exactly the same.
Yeah.
Same density.
Same round, yeah.
Weirdly, this wasn't. Weirdly, according to this official document for this, it was in the House Select Committee on Assassinations, there was 4 different grades of ammunition, hard to soft, in each box of this ammunition. And that explains why the first 2 shots were high density and the last one was low density. There's no markings on them to tell you which is which, so it was just lucky that the kill shot was a low density round. And what do you make of that? Because I call BS on that.
Well, I don't know. Do the ammunition manufacturers manufacture boxes of mixed ammunition? Does that exist? I don't think that exists. So it seems more to me that it's just a way of covering up the ballistics of the kill shot, basically.
Yep.
I think probably that what happened was that the kill shot was fired by someone different to the initial shots, which were fired by Lee Harvey Oswald. To be quite honest, I would
argue that's it. And we know in the House Select Committee, they said from acoustic evidence that they believe there was 4 shots, not 3. But we know Lee Harvey Oswald only fired 3 rounds. So could Lee Harvey Oswald have fired the shots? That's what we have to ask. Lots of people have asked this question over the years. Some people have said it's impossible with this weapon to fire those 3 rounds that quickly. Other people have said, of course it is, and anybody trained could have done it. I believe it was possible that he fired 3 rounds in the few seconds from beginning to end. In 1956, he was trained in the Marine Corps. he was a sharpshooter. He got sharpshooter rating, which isn't the highest rating, but it's pretty good. It means he's a pretty good shot. In 1959, he was downgraded to a marksman rating, which is still a reasonable shot. Fellow soldiers, though, said he was inconsistent, to say the least. He said he would regularly hit a red flag, which means that you fire and completely miss the target, and everybody has to stop for a second just to make sure that no one's been killed, sort of thing. But you have to actually have to stop and do everything, and you get a red flag. He said also says he was used to that he would very often completely miss on this first shot, which he actually did on the day, and then he would get more accurate as he fired second and third shots. That's actually quite normal. For a reasonably poor shot, is that you fire, miss, and then reacquaint your target, fire again, and get closer.
Yeah, that's sensible. Yeah.
He wasn't far away. We're talking around 80 meters for the kill shot. That's not far away for a sniper rifle with a reasonable scope. Any reasonable shot, sharpshooter rating above, could make that kill shot easily.
Well, yeah.
Snipers.
I mean, what's the longest confirmed kill? I think is it? I don't know, 1.5 miles, a couple of kilometers.
At least 2 kilometers, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're talking about 50 cal weapons, much bigger rifles, but yeah.
Oh, of course. But 80 meters. I'm just giving it as a comparison. It's
It's not a thing.
It's a 20th of the distance of a maximum.
Yeah, exactly.
If not more, 30th.
So it is possible he did this, but I don't think it's probable. So I'm going to tell you how I would do it if this was me. For one, we'd need an inside man, all right? Because the Secret Service are there to protect the president. And there are certain things that they do, like where they position themselves, to mean that actually somebody firing pot shots at the president is quite difficult. One of the things they do is they put men on the tail of the vehicle. Well, nowadays the vehicle's bulletproof, but they put men on the tail of the vehicle. Another thing they do is they have quite a consistent speed, and actually they do go quite quickly, because actually firing at somebody that's moving away from you is incredibly difficult. Firing at somebody moving from side to side is quite easy. We can track that, and we can do that calculation in our head. Bullets don't go in a straight line. They actually go up as they accelerate and then come back down again as they start to slow down. So we have this arc trajectory. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's going from side to side, that arc is quite easy to calculate, and you just track. Somebody moving towards you or away from you is very difficult to do that. You need to know what you're doing. You
have to do trigonometry, don't you, in your head quickly on the fly, basically, whilst you're there to readjust.
You'll be constantly readjusting that arc trajectory, because you have to constantly readjust your sight. So you would either have to have lined up so you know the distance, so you'd know where at what point he was at a specific distance and take your shot then, which we'll talk about in a second, because I think that's exactly what they did. Or you have to be an incredible shot. As I said, Kellerman, who was the lead Secret Service guy at the time, just before the shots, Kellerman ordered the tailmen off the vehicle. And in this video you can see now, you can see the Secret Service man, as he's ordered, step away, sort of doing this and waving his arms around. We're like, well, what the hell are we doing? What are you doing? As he was ordered to get off the vehicle.
As in, this isn't normal protocol. What?
Yeah. Why are you telling me to do that? And then he's told to get onto the second vehicle. So you can see them then jump onto the second vehicle. As we said, Mr. Greer, not related to Stephen Greer, by the way, and I have had comments by that before. Stephen Greer, his dad killed JFK. He didn't.
It's what led to this video, really.
It is actually. So you then see Greer slow down. You then see the first shot that completely missed. Second shot, magic bullet. Third shot, exploded his head, in theory. If I was doing this, I would want at least 3 spotters. So 3 people watching to make sure that everything was in the right place and seeing whether the vehicle was in the right place. Because this would be a very fluid situation. In assassinating the president, you have to make sure that you are dead on. So you'd want a contingency plan. Lots of people saw somebody with a rifle on the grassy knoll. That's where this theory comes from, that's where the death shot come from. But like I said earlier, it's not possible. But what I would want is if my first shooter, if something happened, either something happened that you wasn't expecting and the shot was blocked, say, somebody stands in the wrong place, or God knows what, or Kellerman doesn't do what he's told, or whatever, you'd then want a second shooter, and I'd want to position it on the grassy knoll. And as soon as he gets anywhere near the undercurrent, the underpass, to take the shot down. But that would be a backup contingency plan. You need somebody in the field who's going to actually watch everything and decide when to go. And there was a man seen with a radio, a very large radio, who's never been identified. And you've got this umbrella man, who was actually later identified as a Louis Stephen Witt, who said, you could see in the video again, that this umbrella man, this guy that just randomly stands in the middle of the street and lifts an umbrella up on a very sunny, lovely day in Dallas, sits next to the radio man at one point. And in the commission, they asked, well, what did he say? What were you talking about? And you just said, this guy just sat there, and you just said, oh, they've got him then. And then got up and walked off. It looks like a debrief to me. It looks like they've sat down and gone, right, okay, done, get out of here, sort of thing.
Quite possibly.
The reason for the umbrella man, in my opinion, is if you are taking a fluid shot in this kind of situation, you need two things. You need somebody to visibly say to go, because you could, as a contingency, again, the radios might not work, something might get blocked. You have to think about what if the signal can't get through, particularly in the 60s when radios weren't that great. So you have a man in the field with a radio. He makes the decision to go. He signals the umbrella man lifts his umbrella, and that's a go signal for all the people watching and mainly the shooter. But also it gives you, he would stand in a very specific point, and that specific point, it would give the shooter a specific distance. He would act as a marker point for calculating the shot to make sure that you hit the right spot. You need to know, or it helps to know, a specific height at a specific point when you're calculating, making sure you hit the target. Any sniper worth his salt would have one shot, one kill. All right. So my argument would be, I would have a shooter 2 or 3 floors below Oswald. I would have a patsy, in this case Oswald, to take pot shots at the target. If he happens to hit JFK and kill him, fine.
Yeah, it's achieving the ultimate goal of the mission, but they didn't want to entrust that much trust to somebody with varied shooting ability.
Inconsistent, to say the least, yeah. And then I'd want to very specifically control the scene afterwards. So you've got William Greer, like I said, sat in the front of the car. Bang, bang, bang. He turns round to check that JFK is dead. He physically turns around to look, can see the injury. That's when he puts his foot down. That is completely against every rule in the book for a Secret Service agent trying to protect your target.
Yep.
He argues that he wasn't allowed to put his foot down and go until Kellerman tells him. And that actually is a rule at the time. It's a rule that's changed now. If now it would be any agent can do the go signal and just say and to get out of there. But at the time, it was only the lead agent that could. So again, Kellerman was completely on this as well. They then controlled the scene afterwards, and it was Greer, Kellerman, and two other secret agents that stayed in the morgue all night with the body. Again, completely against every protocol and every law. They weren't supposed to do that, but they did, because they needed to control the body. They needed to control the evidence. And that's how I would do it. And that is exactly what they did. Every unusual piece of evidence in this story fits exactly how you would do it if you wanted to assassinate a president and you wanted to make absolutely certain. You have these stories about creating a kill box and bullets coming in from all directions. It's a nonsense. It wouldn't be necessary. You might have a backup just in case the angle becomes compromised that you've set up, but you wouldn't create a kill box, because at these distances, a sniper or a shooter with any sort of decent weapon prepared would be a one shot, one. I do it again. One shot, one kill.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it's a phenomenal cover-up, really, with the evidence that exists.
Yeah, and then you've got a fantastic patsy in Oswald, who took 2 or 3 shots. Like I say, missed completely with the first one. We don't know what happened to the third one because I don't think it went into JFK's head. He then walked out of the building, was seen by 2 or 3 people who said he was acting shifty. He walked away. A policeman, who I actually believe was supposed to probably kill Oswald, or at least arrest him, and because in this situation, the patsy's got to die, but you need plenty of evidence to prove it was him. But I think Oswald surprised him because he pulled a revolver and put 4 bullets into the officer in question. He then walked to a movie theatre and went into and watched a film, which I suspect was probably what he was supposed to do, what he was told to do, to go and meet his handler. Who was supposed to? He's probably been told, "We're going to get you out of the country. Meet us at the theatre. We'll get you out of the country. We'll get you out of here," sort of thing.
Yeah, back to Russia probably.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That would have been what they'd have been telling him probably.
Yeah. Well, with his Russian wife, that's probably what he wanted. Well, we know that's what he wanted actually from the evidence. So he was then arrested. Probably but that was because police turned up that wasn't planned. They arrested him. I actually think that's why it explains why he's then there shouting just before Ruby, a man who was already dying of cancer and was probably paid a lot of money with mob ties, etc., to shoot him, was probably quite a hastily put together plan. Just before he's there, I'm a patsy. It's probably because he was pissed off that he'd had the glory took away from him. I think Oswald knew he hadn't fired the death shot. He didn't kill JFK, and that's when he realised he was being screwed over, because his political motivations and everything are quite clear. The thing about why he wanted to do this, he definitely did.
Yeah,
I think he was a willing participant. I think he was
I agree.
pissed.
More sense in the official story, that's for sure.
And then when you consider the fact that no Secret Service agents were disciplined, right? A president died, and nobody was even given a smack on the wrist. Kellerman, with his actions that day, wasn't even given a discipline action. They didn't even put a letter in his file, sort of thing. The Warren Commission said Oswald acted alone, but the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations said Oswald killed JFK. I'm certainly fired shots at him. I don't think he killed him. They probably assassinated as a result of a conspiracy. Audio evidence of a 4th shot, which I think was probably the kill shot. And then there were serious flaws in the FBI's investigation into whether it was a conspiracy or not, because they didn't look. And I think they were told by very high up people not to look.
Yep. I think you.
So what do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with it all. To be honest, I think it's a far better analysis of the events of that day than the official story. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's just elements of the story that just smack of that it was a government approved, at least on some level, assassination. Greer slowing down. Kellerman's actions. These are quite simple things that are very clear for everyone to see, because we've got the video to prove it. Senator Ralph Yarborough, he said when he heard the shots fired, he felt like the driver slowed and came to what seemed to him to be a complete stop. We can see by the video he doesn't quite stop, but he slows down to a creep. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Not to point a finger at William Greer. He didn't pull the trigger, but it's really hard not to point a finger at him and say you were definitely in on it.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's very, very hard to not prove that there was some complicity between Kellerman and Greer, given the circumstantial evidence of them holding down the evidence after the event, and
Mm.
Yeah, and then yeah, the assassination of the assassin on live TV.
And Ruby was dead within 4 years of that of that happening.
Yeah, that's why they picked perfect guy, wasn't it? Oh yeah, let's ask him to do it. We'll pay him a load of money. He's got cancer. He'll be dead anyway.
Your family will be looked after.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly
as-
what somebody who's got cancer is looking for. So
Yeah, exactly.
so anybody in that situation with that's looking to die from cancer is going to willingly accept a lot of money, probably, to do something like an act like that. Because yeah.
And we know about the mob ties and everything else. So again, we don't know how much they had on him. They could have had this could have been a blackmail situation as well. We don't know how much certain law enforcement agencies. But why do you think that nobody that was involved has ever come forwards? Why is Kellerman? Why did William Greer never say? Why did anybody else that was potentially involved never say? Why is the sniper never come forward?
Well, because I imagine that they were paid off quite well, or buried in the desert.
Yeah, I actually think there's a little bit
One
more
of the
to it.
two. If they can keep their
I
mouth
think they were
shut.
patriots. I think they genuinely believed they were doing the right thing.
Yeah, I do believe that. Which worries me that there are certainly some secret organisations perhaps that exist where rich men with like interests have got together and they've plotted and successfully killed the American president. I suppose you could look at reasons why, couldn't you? And there's a lot of reasons why with JFK. He was going to disband the CIA, so he's making a lot of enemies out of the CIA. He was also on the verge of annoying the mafia quite a bit, who were very linked with the Kennedy family and in society back in the time when
at the height of their power, at the height of their strength.
So the problem is JFK, and then he also threatened to create a currency, disband the Federal Reserve and create a new currency that the government prints rather than a private bank printing. So he upset all of the international bankers, the mafia, and the CIA. The CIA are basically like the mafia of the intelligence agencies of the world. The mafia and the international bankers. Are you surprised he ended up dead?
I'm surprised he lasted as long as he did. But he also, I think, annoyed the industrial military complex and the entire military. If you look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, everyone was screaming out to invade and to start a war, which would have made some people a lot of money. I would argue it could have led to a nuclear war, which would have made less money for people. But
I
JFK pulled back from that constantly.
I bet you it was almost, there was a meeting of like-minded patriots where there was a room of like 10 or 12 people, 10 or 12 people that were from all of these different areas that you just talked about, the people that he pissed off. And I bet you they all sat round a table and went, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Smoking big ass cigars and drinking whiskey, going, this guy's got to go. This guy's got to go.
I can almost believe that. I can almost see that meeting occurring. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it is too big a thing to have an actual open meeting where you openly discuss it. But I'm pretty sure that some rich, like-minded people got together at some point to discuss it somehow, somewhere. They must have. Yeah.
And I think they're probably at Bohemian Grove, in a small room somewhere at Bohemian Grove. No, I think so, mate, because I think like you said, he'd annoyed too many people, too many very powerful people. And I'm sure the really powerful people, the words, let's kill him, never came out of their lips. What they would have done was gone to somebody else saying, I want this resolved, and I want it resolved publicly. Because that was, there were other ways they could have got rid of him that would have been quite. He could have just had a heart attack and they go, oh, he had a heart condition, we didn't realise. Oh dear. And they did it really publicly. And I think that was on purpose as well. I think it was a very strong signal.
That's a warning, isn't it, from the powers that be? Don't mess with our systems. Look what ends up happening to you. Doesn't matter who you are.
And it doesn't matter who you are. Yeah. And we can get you at any point. We can get you at any time we want, sort of thing. And again, it's really public and almost to the people of the United States or the people of the world as well. The people in the know were watching that news report of what happened that day, going, oh shit, look what they've done, sort of thing. I agree with you.
There's a good song. What was it? it uses not Mama, ABBA, Rich Man's World, and it's what's his name again now? Immortal Technique. Basically talking about as though he's one of the you know, the 1%ers, he's one of these things, and it just, you know, he just, there's a verse where he's just basically saying, you know, I put them into power and take them out. I do as and when I see fit, you know.
And that's the truth, isn't it, man? They get into power with these people, these pack money, and if they don't do as you're told, you then like, you haven't done as you're told.
I think JFK was clever. I think he pretended to be a yes man the whole way until he was elected, and then obviously decided to change his tune and what his real, you know, moral values were. Unfortunately, when his moral values came out, the immoral people that run this world didn't agree.
Yeah, and I think all the stuff with like Marilyn Monroe and other stuff that he got up to, I think they thought they could blackmail him, but what they didn't realise was the American people just thought he was a lovable rogue. They loved him more for it. Yeah. So he, you know, there was no. It was not. I think they'd underestimated how much the people loved him, and that's why they had no choice but do what they did. Somebody else, they might have gone, "We'll ruin you. We'll destroy you. We'll ruin you," and JFK just went, "No."
Isn't it strange how the people with good intentions, publicly good intentions, always seem to end up assassinated, yet we let the demons run amok?